Hi, Teresa Moore here, and I have my sweetheart Robert with me. Robert and I have been together for 40 years, and I have my client Johnny Bland, who I've been working with for about 7 years. And Johnny is getting ready to retire. And both Robert and Johnny have a military background. Robert flew for an elite unit after he graduated from the academy, and Johnny has worked for 27 years in security throughout the Pacific Rim with the armed forces. And as Johnny was getting ready to retire, and I started talking to the both of them about what they know with security issues that a normal corporation or business never knows, I thought we have a little bit of magic coming together with a MasterMind program with both of their backgrounds of 20 to 30, 40 years. So with that, Robert's going to introduce some of his background in and experience possibly with security issues. Johnny's going to talk about his background, and then we're going to talk about a few subjects that your corporation or your company will love to learn from these two professionals that have secrets that they don't normally share outside of the military because there isn't a need to. Let me have Johnny start if you don't mind. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So Johnny and I have been working together, and about 2 years ago when he said it's time to retire, and I kept looking for ways, and I said, you got some great security experience. How do we translate it into businesses? And we've been talking about it, and we tested some different approaches, and we have come up with an amazing approach after Robert and I and Johnny have spent, I think we've spent about 10 hours starting to explore. Is that about?
That's about right.
Before we get going, would you take a few minutes and talk about your background, what you do, you've done in the past, and what you do now, and what you think corporations or specialties that you can bring to the table for our MasterMind program?
Okay, yes, my experience is in different countries. My responsibility has been in the Air Force to travel to about 40 different countries, and I'm responsible for classified facilities in those countries and to make sure that they maintain a certain sense of security in all of those facilities. Not only that, we also kept track of security clearances and behavior patterns of people in those different countries. About 40,000 people were my responsibility to ensure that they was fit to maintain security clearances. The last 10 years or so, I've been more in the information protection side of the house, which translate to how do we protect information. It's a new term for security, of course. But we've learned that in dealing with different countries, every country going to have a different culture. And we've learned that in a different culture in different countries is no different. So they are parallels, and that's what people fail to realize. So I think by that experience in dealing with the culture in different countries, I can come in your organization and bring that same outside look to you and possibly have you look at changing your culture if necessary. So that's kind of where I sit.
I've learned after 40 years of someone in the military that the language between the military and civilian life is a separate language. So when you use the word culture, if I was talking about a senior care facility, that would be what a culture would be, right?
That is correct.
And if I was talking about a business that had videos or productions for all kinds of companies, nonprofits or, entertainment industry, that would have a different kind of culture, correct?
That is correct, yes.
So as we start building this MasterMind program, we're going to have to identify the culture that your security experience can translate into a military operation of security. Is that an accurate statement?
You're right on target there, because when we talk about, I mean, you can spend a lot of money in equipment, productivity, what you think, but at the end of the day, it really boils down to boosting the culture, the behavior among people in a certain facility, in a certain company. And that will shape the culture, and that will produce you money, profit, long term.
Excellent. And so we're going to get into some of that, but I wanted to first let you understand that as the mediator of the MasterMind security secrets, My job is to translate what these two guys have in their brain, that they have been drilled, grilled, and trained at a level that you will never experience in your civilian corporate business environment. But it could mean the difference between success and failure financially, with your employees, and with your customers. And so we're going to start to fine-tune your culture with their experience. Let me tell you a little more, because Robert has a little bit of a different experience, and as we've spent this 8 to 10 hours really identifying what their hidden secrets, hidden gifts are, and how do we convert that. Robert, I'd love you to share a little bit about your background and our background after we got married.
Well, on the operations side, my experience has been in small units, aviation units, and security was a very important aspect throughout all of the various operations. Then I left the military, and I worked for a corporation for several years in a union environment, and definitely security was an important aspect, not only in the production but in personnel management, and then things that were happening on the outside. They were trying to do a cultural change in the work environment, so that was always an important aspect. And then the last 25 years, I'd say, we went into business for ourselves and ran our own business. So security was an important aspect of our business all along the way. And when I look back over these last 40 years, yeah, it's 40 years. Actually, I think it comes down to three important aspects that security is involved in. That is, in any business, you have to perform three functions, and that is command, control, and communication. And security is always an aspect of those three functions, and it's a continuous thing. Like Johnny said, if you don't allocate resources and plan for that, you eventually it's going to catch you, and you're going to lose a lot of money. Whereas if you plan ahead and you provide for those, you'll gain a lot in the long term.
So I'd like to spend a little more time on your background, because although I know, because I lived it, I was an Army wife, and more than an Army wife, because of your military background as an academy grad, you were trained in some areas that the average military person is not trained in, and that is really one of the exercises, that a live exercise that your unit was involved with was when they went into Grenada, yeah. When our country, and he was involved with that. Now, he sighs very heavily because, and this is the part of the MasterMind facilitator, what was that heavy sigh about?
Well, I don't think that this is not appropriate.
Okay, so what Robert's saying is, Johnny and Robert have some top secret experience that as a civilian, they may not know how to apply it or even frame the question of how can that experience help me. So I'm going to share with you, as an officer's wife, in the middle of that exercise or that event, and through his whole military career and after, how he couldn't share anything with me. Yet there were things that I learned from what we were allowed to understand that the average civilian personnel, company, employees, or community do not know. And so those are some of the things that both of these gentlemen are going to bring to the table. So for example, when their unit went into Grenada, there were civilians that they were trained on how to interact with them. They were trained on how to keep the environment safe. They were trained on how to keep their exercise top secret. And those are some of the things. Now Robert has a little smirk on his face, because you don't think, when you're in the military, you don't think about, how do I integrate this into civilian life? This is an area that Robert has some amazing experience in, also because he went on and got his law degree, understanding how the law works. See, in the military, you have a chain of command, you have rules, and they are not the same as a civilian environment. And so with that dual experience of having his law degree and working in business, but with the military training of command, control, and communicate, how do we integrate that into your company? How do we integrate safety and any kind of skills that Johnny, after 27 years, really has it down to a science of, okay, if this is happening, then we can expect that. Any last questions before we sign off, and then we're going to come back with 10 key tips that every company should look at, that these two men with their military background, with their security skills and their training are going to look at very different, but on a profitability, safety issue, and community awareness of the company and liabilities you could have without these tips. Any last comments, thoughts?
I think you summed up pretty good, really. Even though we're from two different worlds, guess what? At the end of the day, we come back to how do we provide a secure environment for your company and help you make money and reduce your expenditure. So I think that's good.
Thoughts for you, Robert?
No, I think that's the best way to look at it, yeah.
I personally believe, and I want to know if both of you agree, that nobody out in the civilian world will ever get the amount of education, skill, and training that you two have had in the military. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I do.
The kind of training that you have, a normal corporation couldn't afford it, and you would never be able to have that many, I'll call it moving parts, for you bringing together many different units to accomplish a task in a time related, with safety as priority, but more important, accomplishing the task or the goal successfully. The one thing that I found, and that's why you're going to like me as a mediator, is profitability is usually not something that military look at, except for, and Robert brought this up, when you're managing a unit, you are only given so much in the budget. So they really do work on budget, but the budget's not coming from your hard-earned dollar. It's coming from the government. Very different approach, and so you're going to approach it differently as an entrepreneur, business owner, corporation, shareholder. And those are the people that we're going to be supporting with this kind of security, skill, knowledge, and experience. Thank you for joining us.